Christmas morning, I touched the gifts under the tree and realized something chilling. Every "From Grandpa Harlan" tag was gone, erased like he never existed. My mother blamed a style change, but the paper and ribbon were not his. My wallet held last week's receipt, Harlan Beckett Gift Trust Holiday Disbursement. If they erased his name from the gifts, what else were they erasing from his life? I am not getting the gifts back. I am getting back the truth. My name is Sienna Gray. I am 29 years old, and I work as a financial analyst at Northlight Freight Analytics. My job is to find the signal in the noise. I stare at spreadsheets until the numbers confess. I track ghost shipments, rounding errors that hide theft, and logistical patterns that betray intent. I am good at my job. I am good at seeing the discrepancy that everyone else overlooks. This morning, the discrepancy was not on a screen. It was under a Christmas tree. The house, my mother Lydia's house that she shares with my Uncle Gareth, was exactly as it should be. Suburban Minneapolis, a perfect dusting of fresh snow on the lawns, the scent of blue spruce and cinnamon-spiced coffee filling the warm, yellow-lit living room. It was a flawless picture of upper-middle-class holiday comfort. The tree, a towering fir, was professionally decorated, dripping with white lights and glass ornaments. Beneath it, the requisite mountain of gifts. It was a display of obscene, comforting abundance, and it was all wrong. The tags were the first thing. My little cousins, Ben and Mia, were tearing through the paper, their squeals echoing off the vaulted ceiling. They are good kids, innocent and sweet, and their joy was the only real thing in the room. I watched my mother hand a large, silver-wrapped box to my brother, Evan. I saw the tag, a small, stiff, cream-colored card, printed, in a generic, gold-foil script, were two words, "From Family." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Minnesota winter outside. I moved closer to the tree, my coffee forgotten in my hand. I picked up a small, heavy box addressed to me. Same tag, "From Family." I scanned the pile, every box, every brightly colored bag, every single gift, bore the same identical, impersonal, laser-printed tag. From Family. My grandfather, Harlan Beckett, had a tradition. For every Christmas, every birthday, every minor holiday, he wrote the tags himself. He wrote them with a specific, heavy, black felt-tip pen. His handwriting was unmistakable, a strong, leaning script. The H in Harlan always tilted slightly to the right, a confident, proprietary stroke. His notes were part of the gift. To Sienna. Try not to analyze this one. Love, Grandpa Harlan. Or for the little ones. To Ben. Be good to your mother. From Grandpa Harlan. This year, there was nothing. His name, his hand, his presence erased. I thought back to just last Monday, only 5 days ago. I had driven Grandpa Harlan to his jeweler to get the battery in his favorite watch replaced. He was frail. Yes, his bones thin beneath his cashmere sweater, but his mind was a steel trap. We sat in the quiet, clock-ticking air of the shop, waiting. "Sienna," he said, his voice a low, dry rustle, but firm. "You are coming on Christmas. You and Evan. Of course, Grandpa. We would not miss it." "Good, good." He tapped his fingers on the glass counter. "I had Mrs. Calder handle the shopping. She knows the lists. But I told her, and I'm telling you, the tags are what matter. They must say from me, from Grandpa Harlan, not from Santa Claus, not from the elves, and not from the family." He spat that last word like it was a bad investment. "Gratitude, child. It is not automatic. It has to be taught. The little ones must know who the gift comes from. They must know who to thank. You make sure they see my name." "I will, Grandpa," I had promised. "They will know." Now, standing in the wreckage of colored paper, I felt like a liar. The promise, his specific, explicit wish, had been violated. "The tags are different this year," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. I held up the small, generic card. My mother, Lydia, waved a dismissive hand. She was looking at a new silk scarf, a gift from Gareth. Oh, yes, we decided on a theme, so much cleaner. Do not you think a unified look? She did not meet my eyes. Your grandfather was exhausted. Honey, truly, we just wanted to let him rest. He did not need the stress of all those tags. A plausible, gentle lie, a lie I would have accepted if not for Monday. He had not been stressed. He had been insistent. My Uncle Gareth, Lydia's brother, laughed, a big booming sound that was always too loud for the room. Team effort, Sienna. That is what this family is about. Team effort. He clapped me on the shoulder, a heavy, familiar gesture. Makes it simpler for everyone. Streamlines the process. Streamlines. That was a word I understood. It was a word used in my industry right before a hostile takeover. Gareth's eyes, however, did not meet mine. They darted away, just for a second, to his wife, my Aunt Paula, who was smiling, watching the children, her expression perfectly serene. Gareth avoided my gaze. That was the data point. I looked at my brother, Evan. He is 23, 4 years younger than me, and still living in the warm, comfortable bubble of family money. He was ripping the box open, pulling out a new gaming console. Evan, I said, my voice low, did you see Grandpa write his tags this year? Evan flinched, a tiny, almost imperceptible tensing of his shoulders. What I do not know. See, does it matter? He held up the box, his face bright with forced enthusiasm. Look at this thing. This is the new model. I did not think they were even out yet. He knew. He knew it mattered, and he was deliberately choosing to look at the shiny new toy instead. He was avoiding the question, just like Lydia and Gareth. I backed away from the tree. The warmth of the room felt artificial, the scent of pines suddenly cloying. This was not a team effort. This was a coordinated action. This was an erasure. My job at Northlight Freight Analytics involves looking for this exact feeling. It is the cold, clean prickle in my gut that says the numbers are lying. A shipment is logged from Shanghai at 10,000 tons, but it arrives in Long Beach at 9,500. Someone, somewhere, skimmed 500 tons. A fuel invoice is submitted for a route that is 20% longer than the optimal path. Someone, somewhere, is diverting a truck. The Harlan Beckett Gift Trust had dispersed its annual holiday fund. I had seen the notification in my own trust portal, a residual benefit of being a beneficiary. I knew what the disbursement was. I knew who the gifts were from. And here, in my hand, was a tag that amounted to a falsified bill of lading. The gifts had been diverted. The sender's name had been scrubbed. This emptiness I felt had nothing to do with presents. I did not care about the small, heavy box in my hand, which probably contained a watch or a bracelet. I cared that the evidence of my grandfather, his agency, his specific, stated wish, had been systematically, deliberately, and collaboratively removed. It was a theft of identity. I looked at my mother, laughing at something Gareth said. I looked at Evan, already plugging the console into the television, the wrapping paper a sea at his feet. They were either participants or willing accessories. My gaze drifted to the window. The snow was falling lightly, blurring the edges of the neighbors' houses. I pulled out my phone. Snowbridge House, the private nursing facility where Grandpa Harlan lived, a place that cost a fortune, a place his trust paid for. Visiting hours ended at 8 in the evening. It was just past 10 in the morning. I would be there by 6. I would not call ahead. I would not announce my arrival. You do not tip off a system you suspect is compromised. Then, a final, colder realization hit me. I scanned the room, the base of the tree, the mantelpiece where other cards were displayed. It was missing, every year, for as long as I could remember, separate from the pile. My grandfather gave me a special envelope. It was always the same, a slim, crimson envelope, the color of old wine. It was never under the tree. He would press it into my hand when I was leaving, or he would leave it on my nightstand. Inside, there was always cash, crisp, new $100 bills, and a simple, handwritten note. For your rainy day fund, Sienna, do not tell your mother, love, Grandpa Harlan. It was our secret. It was our connection. I looked everywhere. It was not there. They had not just erased his public name. They had not just stolen the gratitude he demanded. They had reached into the private, quiet corners of his life and erased that, too. They had stolen our secret. The game was no longer about gratitude. It was about control. They thought I was just a granddaughter, happy with her scarves and bracelets. They forgot I'm an analyst. They forgot I get paid to find out exactly where the money went and who signed for it. I would see my grandfather tonight, and I would find out who was holding the pen. The chaos of Christmas morning is the perfect cover, while my mother and uncle were absorbed in a loud, self-congratulatory post-mortem of the morning's success, and Evan was lost in his new digital world. I began my work. I moved through the living room with a trash bag, feigning helpfulness, my eyes scanning the floor. The little cousins were building a fort out of empty boxes, their laughter pure and oblivious. I would keep it that way. My targets were the scraps, the discarded pieces of the new, wrong wrapping paper. My grandfather had always used the same paper, a thick, foil-lined stock from a specialty store downtown. The kind that cost a fortune and was difficult to fold. This new paper was thin, slick, and tore easily. I spotted a large triangle of it near the fireplace, a silver and blue monstrosity. I folded it quickly, my analyst's mind noting the details. On the inside, near the torn edge, was a manufacturer's lot code, GL1224 ribbon, a mass-market brand. I palmed it, along with a scrap of the matching blue ribbon. I also retrieved one of the laser-printed From Family tags that had been tossed aside. I slipped them all into the pocket of my jeans. I excused myself. "Jet lag is catching up with me," I murmured to my mother, who just nodded, already halfway into a story about her garden club. I went upstairs to my old bedroom, closed the door, and locked it. The room was quiet. I sat at the desk, my heart a cold. Steady metronome. This was not a home. This was a scene, and I was processing it. I pulled out my laptop and tethered it to my phone. First, the bank. As a named future beneficiary of the Harlan Beckett Gift Trust, I have read only access to the primary statements. I logged into the secure portal. The interface was familiar, cold, and blue. I navigated to the trust. There it was. A single, large disbursement. Date December 20th. Amount $48,000. Authorization Paula Vance, my Aunt Paula, my Uncle Gareth's wife, co-trustee. The trust was structured with 2 co-trustees for checks and balances, Paula, representing the family, and Nolan Crisp, the family's longtime attorney, representing the trust itself. For a disbursement of this size, technically only one signature was needed, but it was understood that both would consult. I wondered if Nolan knew. Paula, who ran a struggling, vaguely defined lifestyle consulting business, had just authorized a transfer equivalent to her annual salary. Next, I needed a baseline. I opened my email archives. I searched Grandpa Christmas. The results flooded in. I clicked on an email from last year. It was a photo I had sent to a friend, showing off the rare leather-bound book he had found for me. Tucked beside it was the tag, in perfect focus, his handwriting, the confident, right-leaning H, the firm, black ink. I saved the image to my desktop and zoomed in, capturing a high-resolution screenshot of his signature. It was the control sample. Now, the supplier. I found the number in my contacts. Mrs. Calder. She had been my grandfather's personal shopper for 15 years. She was the one who hunted down his specific requests, who knew his taste. I took a breath and dialed. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm. "Sienna, dear, a very Merry Christmas to you." "Merry Christmas, Mrs. Calder," I said, forcing a note of light confusion into my voice. I just opened Grandpa's gifts, and I was a little surprised. The wrapping was so different this year. I was just calling to thank you for handling everything, but I wanted to make sure. Did you help him with it?" The warmth on the other end of the line evaporated. There was a pause. When she spoke again, her voice was tight. Professional. Sienna, I am glad you called. No, dear, I did not. I received a call on the 19th of December from Mrs. Vance, your Aunt Paula. My fingers tightened on the phone. What did she say? She was very abrupt. She told me my services for the holiday would not be required, that the order was canceled. I explained that I had already sourced everything, that the items were waiting in carts at Nordstrom, at the gaming store for your brother, at the jeweler's. She said it did not matter. She said, and I quote, "The family will be handling the purchases internally this year." Internally, after 15 years. Sienna, I was very surprised. I hope your grandfather is all right. He is, I said, my voice hardening. He will be. Thank you. Mrs. Calder, you have been a tremendous help. I hung up. The timeline was sharpening. December 19th, Paula cancels the 15-year relationship with Mrs. Calder. December 20th, Paula authorizes a $48,000 disbursement to herself. To a new account, I went back downstairs. The living room was quieter. Evan was in the corner, headphones on, face bathed in the blue light of his new game. I walked over and started gathering the empty boxes, again playing the part of the helpful daughter. I found the large, glossy box for his console. Tucked inside one of the flaps was a gift receipt. I pulled it out. I found the box for my own gift, a heavy, expensive-looking watch, not my style at all, and found its gift receipt, too. I took them back upstairs. I laid them on the desk. They were from a major electronics retailer. The purchases were made on December 21st. The payment method was listed as store credit card. But the key was the gift receipt itself. It was my paper trail back to the source. It was the mechanism for reversal. A gift receipt is a leash. You can follow it, and you can use it to pull the value right back to the original tender. I looked at the tag I had pocketed, the stiff, cream-colored cardstock. It was expensive, which was strange. Why bother with quality cardstock for a cheap, laser-printed tag? I held it to my nose. A smell, faint, acidic, sharp, acetone, nail polish remover. My blood went cold. I rummaged in my travel bag, the one I use for work. In a side pocket, I found my utility kit, and in it, a small, pen-sized UV light. I use it to check for counterfeit currency on international trips. A small, paranoid trick of the trade. I clicked off the desk lamp, plunging the room into shadow. I clicked on the UV light. I held the tag under the small, purple beam. It was not clean. The cardstock lit up, and there, on the right-hand side, was a faint, angry smudge, a ghostly skeletal shape that the solvent had not fully erased. The ink was gone, but the impression, the damage to the fibers of the paper, remained. It was a flourish. It was a familiar, right-leaning, confident stroke. It was the ghost of an H. They had not just replaced his tags, they had received his gifts, which Mrs. Calder had likely already had tagged and wrapped. They had received his handwritten messages, and then, one by one, they had sat down with a bottle of acetone and chemically, painstakingly, erased his name. I felt a surge of cold, pure rage. This was not a style change. This was not a team effort. This was a meticulous, premeditated act of forgery and destruction. I needed to know who. I went downstairs. Evan was in the kitchen, grabbing a soda. I cornered him. Sienna, not now. I am in the middle of a... They erased his name, Evan. I did not raise my voice. I held up the tag and the UV light. I clicked it on. I showed him the ghost. He winced, looking away. See, come on. It is not a big deal. Who did it? I do not know. You are lying. I kept my voice flat. You are a terrible liar. Evan, you were here last night. You saw it. Who did it? He cracked. He always cracks. It was Aunt Paula, he whispered, his eyes darting to the living room. Her and Ty. They were here late, after Mom went to bed. They were rebranding, they called it. Paula said it was time for the Vance Gray family brand to be the focus. Not just Grandpa, Ty. Ty said it was stupid for all the photos to have Grandpa's old-fashioned name on them, and it would look better for their Instagram if it was all unified. So they got out the nail polish remover and just did it. They swapped them all out. My cousin Ty, Paula's son. Of course, I left Evan at the refrigerator. I went back to my room. I opened a new, encrypted file on my laptop. I began to draw a map. The players were clear. Paula, the primary agent, driven by greed and a tacky ambition. Gareth, her enabler. Ty, her mouthpiece, injecting the poison of branding into the family. My mother, Lydia, willfully blind, providing the cover of Family Harmony. And Evan, the reluctant, weak-willed witness. Standing against them was Nolan Crisp, the lawyer, an unknown variable. My objective for Phase 1 was simple. Secure the evidence. Do not engage. Do not confront. Confrontation would make them defensive. It would make them hide the money, destroy the evidence, and close ranks. I needed to build an unimpeachable case before they even knew I was looking. I went back downstairs, my phone in my hand. I smiled at Evan. "Hey, let me see that new console. What is the serial number on this thing? I want to see if I can get one." He read it off to me. I typed it into my spreadsheet. I moved to the new soundbar. "Wow, Mom, this is great. Where is the box?" I found it, and I logged the serial number. I did the same for the television. My aunt's new espresso machine. My mother's watch. I cross-referenced every high-value item with the gift receipts I had. I was creating a chain of custody. I went back to my room and built my timeline. December 16th. I am with Grandpa. He explicitly demands his name be on the tags. December 19th, Paula cancels Mrs. Calder, who had the tags. December 20th, Paula authorizes a $48,000 disbursement. December 21st, new items are purchased on a store card. December 24th, Paula and Ty execute the chemical erasure of his name and replace the tags. December 25th, the curtain rises on From Family. I looked out the window. The snow was falling again. The little cousins were now outside, their coats bright against the white, having a snowball fight. They were safe. They were innocent. My self-imposed rule was absolute. My fight was not with them. I would not take a single toy from their hands. My fight was with the adults. This was about the assets and the name they tried to erase. I left my mother's house at 5:30 in the evening, citing a headache from the recycled warm air. The drive to Snowbridge House was 20 minutes, the streets dark and wet, the last of the holiday shoppers sliding through yellow lights. Snowbridge was not a hospital. It was a luxury senior living residence, which meant it looked like a hotel, smelled faintly of lavender, and cost as much as a new car every month. I bypassed the main lounge and went straight to the administrative wing. The facility manager, a woman named Ms. Alvarez, was just packing up. "Ms. Gray," she said, surprised but professional. "A Merry Christmas. Is everything all right?" "Merry Christmas," I said, giving her a tight, polite smile. "I just wanted to check in. I'm here to see my grandfather. How has he been?" "Truly." She lowered her voice, her gaze shifting to her office door. "Come in for a moment." I sat in the stiff guest chair. "Honestly, Ms. Alvarez," she said, sitting on the edge of her desk. "He is, variable. He has wonderful, lucid days, sharp as a tack. Then he has days where he is, as he puts it, in the fog. He fatigues very easily, which is normal, but his mind, when it is on, is fully on. And his mood." She hesitated. "He has been a bit agitated the last week, anxious about the holiday. I think he kept asking the orderlies to make sure his preparations were on track. He seemed to think something was wrong with the gifts." My stomach tightened. "Thank you. That is very helpful." I went to his suite on the 3rd floor. He was in his armchair, not watching the television, just looking out the window at the dark courtyard. "Sienna," he said, his voice brightening instantly. The fog was gone. He was here. "Hi, Grandpa." I kissed his dry, papery cheek. I did not mention the gifts, the tags, or the family. We talked about the snow. We talked about my job, which he found endlessly fascinating. Freight analytics. "So you count boxes, Sienna." For 10 minutes, I was just his granddaughter, visiting on Christmas. As I was getting ready to leave, adjusting his blanket, he grabbed my wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Sienna," he said, his eyes sharp and worried. "Did you get my note? The one I wrote for you." I froze. He was not talking about the crimson envelope. He was talking about the tags, the specific messages he wrote. He had written them. He remembered writing them. This was the nail in the coffin. "I got a beautiful watch. Grandpa," I said carefully, avoiding the lie. His eyes clouded. "But the note," he insisted, his voice thinning. "Did you get the note from me?" "I am looking into it, Grandpa," I said, squeezing his hand. "You rest. I will handle it." He relaxed slightly, but his gaze was still troubled. He had done his part. He had signed the tags, and he knew, in that infallible way he had, that someone had intercepted them. I left his room and went to the nurse's station, my heart hammering with a cold, controlled fury. The head nurse, a practical, no-nonsense woman named Brenda, was reviewing a chart. "Excuse me, Brenda," I said. "Sienna Gray, Harlan Beckett's granddaughter. I was just in with him." "Oh, yes. Merry Christmas, Miss Gray." "I am just reviewing some of the trust paperwork for the new year," I said, pulling out my phone as if to check a file. "I just want to make sure everything is squared away for his January billing," Brenda sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Well, I am glad someone is checking. We had a slightly concerning call." "A call?" "From Mrs. Vance, your aunt. I believe she called us on the 22nd. She was inquiring. She said the trust was a bit tight after the holidays, and she wanted to know if the January payment could be deferred by a few weeks. We explained that our terms are net 15, not net 45. She was not happy." My blood ran cold. Tight after a $48,000 disbursement. They were not just erasing his name. They were draining his operating funds. They were threatening his care. "I see," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Brenda, just for my records, I am starting a recording." I tapped my phone screen, making sure the red icon was visible. "This state allows for single-party consent, but I want you to be aware. Can you please confirm for me what Mrs. Vance said about the trust?" Brenda, unfazed, repeated her statement. "She said the trust was tight. She wanted to defer the January payment." "And did she give a reason for the trust being tight?" "She mentioned holiday expenditures, and then, strangely, she said something about a change in gift purchasing agents. I did not understand what that meant. I just told her the bill is the bill." "Thank you, Brenda. You have been very helpful." I stopped the recording and saved the file. I went back to my car, the engine clicking in the cold. Dark garage. The pieces were no longer just falling into place. They were building a gallows. I drove to a 24-hour coffee shop, sat in a vinyl booth, and connected to their public Wi-Fi through my VPN. I pulled up the trust bylaws. I had read them before, but now I was reading them like a prosecutor. I found it. Article 7, Section 3. The purpose of holiday gifting. My grandfather, ever the moralist, had a clause for everything. The bylaw stated that all gifts to beneficiaries and their minor children purchased from the trust must clearly and legibly state their origin from the grantor, Harlan Beckett. It went on. The purpose of this distribution is not merely material. It is to educate beneficiaries on the source of their good fortune and to instill a measurable sense of gratitude. It was not just a wish. It was a contractual, legally binding mandate by erasing his name. Paula had not just been tacky. She had committed a material breach of trust. She had violated the fiduciary duty she owed him. I went back to the bank portal. I ran the full statement for the last 30 days. There was the $48,000 disbursement, coded as holiday gifting admin. Admin, a classic slush fund term. I drilled down into the disbursement. It had not gone to a bank. It had been transferred to a corporate credit card account. But there was another, smaller transfer, a separate line item from the same day. December 20th, amount $8,400, to Vance Family Services, LLC, memo event management fee. I almost laughed. Vance Family Services, LLC, a shell company. I had Googled it once. It was Paula's lifestyle consulting business, registered to her home address, with no website and no clients I had ever seen. She had paid herself over $8,000 to manage the event of buying gifts, buying the wrong gifts, with the wrong paper, and then chemically destroying the evidence of their origin. She was skimming. It was blatant. I needed help, not family help. I pulled up a name I had kept on file for years, a contact from a woman I had met at a corporate finance seminar, Rhea Coleman, a forensic accountant and a trust litigation lawyer, the sharpest, quietest woman in the room. I sent her a secure email. Rhea, Sienna Gray, I have a problem with a family trust. Need 30 minutes of your time tomorrow. I am attaching a retainer and the trust bylaws. The problem is urgent. I sat back, the bad coffee cooling in my hand. I had the motive. Paula's greed, the method, the cancellation, the gift cards, the acetone, and the breach Article 7, Section 3. The risk was obvious. If I confronted them now, at dinner tomorrow, they would panic. Paula and Gareth would lawyer up. They would drain the remaining funds, transfer them to their LLC, and bury my grandfather's assets in a legal battle that he, in his fragile state, could not withstand. A direct assault was the wrong move. I looked at the calendar on my phone. Today was December 25th. Tomorrow, December 26th, was the single greatest day of commercial returns in the American retail calendar. The stores would be flooded, the staff overwhelmed. It was a holiday returns window. It was the perfect cover. I had the gift receipts. I had the serial numbers. The receipts were my key. They were the link to the original tender. I would not confront them. I would not accuse them. I would change the battlefield, as my old boss used to say. They thought the fight was about family, about gratitude, about branding. They were wrong. The fight was about liquidity. I would use their own tools against them. I would take every single high-value gift Evan's console, my mother's watch, Ty's new sound system, every laptop and tablet, and I would return them, not for cash, which they could trace, but back onto the original tender, back to the trust. I would use the receipts to claw back every dollar they had misspent. This was not about fighting over gifts. This was about protecting my grandfather. This was about restoring his capital. I was not taking the presents. I was taking back the money they had stolen in his name, and I was going to use that money to secure his care. I started a new spreadsheet. Column A, store. Column B, item. Column C, serial number. Column D, receipt code. Column E, value. I prioritized the high-value electronics first. My plan was set. Tomorrow, I would not be Sienna Gray, the granddaughter. I would be Northlight Freight Analytics, and I was conducting an audit. The morning of December 26th was a different kind of storm. The family was nursing a collective hangover, not from alcohol, but from excessive consumption and forced cheer. They were all moving slowly, adrift in a sea of discarded paper and new shiny objects. This was my window. I was up at 6, before anyone else, with 3 large empty duffel bags I had brought from my apartment. I moved through the quiet, dim living room like a ghost. I collected the targets, Evan's new console, still in its box by the television, the gift receipt tucked in my pocket, the new 40-inch smart TV intended for the guest room, which was really Ty's overspill entertainment, the high-end espresso machine Aunt Paula had gifted herself. From family, my own unopened, unwanted watch, my mother's new laptop. One by one, I checked the serial numbers against my spreadsheet. I scanned the gift receipts. I methodically packed the bags. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Gathering duplicates and wrong models for return will sort it all out so no one has to deal with the hassle. Back later. It was a perfect, helpful lie. I was Sienna, the responsible one, cleaning up the mess. They would be relieved, not suspicious. At 9:15, I was outside the home of Mrs. Calder. She was waiting by her door, dressed impeccably, her expression one of grim determination. She got into my car. I have not worked the day after Christmas returns line in 20 years. Sienna, she said, fastening her seatbelt. But for Harlan, I will face the hordes. You are just my cover. Mrs. Calder, I said. You are the familiar face. You are the one who knows all the managers at the high-end stores. I am just the analyst with the paperwork. What you are doing is right, child, she said, her gloved hand resting on her purse. It is not about the money, it is about the name. It is about both, I said, pulling into traffic. The money is the leverage, the name is the principle. Before we went into the first store, I stood at the trunk of my car. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small, black device, no larger than a key fob. I clipped it to the center of my bra. Beneath the wool of my sweater, a mini body camera. I pressed the small, discreet button. A tiny vibration confirmed it was recording. For my protection, I told Mrs. Calder. She just nodded, her face grim. A woman alone at a return counter is just a customer. A woman with a complete file is a threat. I want a record of how they treat the threat. We walked into the electronics megastore. The line at customer service returns was already 50 people deep. It snaked past aisles of marked-down televisions. The air was thick with frustration. Mrs. A. Calder walked past the line. She went straight to the elevated desk at the end, where a manager, looking harassed, was signing a void slip. Ronald, Mrs. Calder said, her voice cutting through the noise. The manager looked up, his face a mask of exhaustion, and then it cleared. Mrs. Calder, my goodness, what are you doing here today? I thought you retired from this madness. I am here for Mr. Beckett, she said, as if Harlan himself were standing behind her. His granddaughter, Sienna, needs to process an exchange on his behalf. Ronald looked at me, then at the line, then back at Mrs. Calder's imperious, calm face. Of course, Mrs. Calder. Right this way, Susan. I am taking this one. He led us to an empty register. What have we got? I took a breath. This was the performance. No anger, no accusations. Just quiet, relentless, unassailable procedure. Good morning, Ronald, I said, all business. We have several items here that were purchased on the wrong tender. They need to be returned to the original account. I unzipped the first duffel bag. I placed the boxed console on the counter. I slid the gift receipt across. This item, I said, serial number X94321, matches this receipt. It was purchased as part of the Harlan Beckett Gift Trust, but was mistakenly attributed to a general family account. It needs to be refunded to the original tender. He scanned the receipt. Ma'am, a gift receipt is usually for store credit or an exchange. I understand, I said calmly. But this is a fiduciary matter. The item was purchased from a trust, which is a legal entity. I am a beneficiary of that trust, and this is a documented administrative error. The funds must revert to the original account. If you check the transaction number, you will see it was paid from the Beckett Trust corporate card. Ronald paused. He looked at the serial number on my spreadsheet, then at the box, then at the receipt. He saw that I was not a flustered shopper. I was an auditor. Let me see what I can do. He typed for several minutes. Okay, I can override this. It will go back to the original card. It will take 5 to 7 business days to appear. That is fine, I said. I will need a receipt of that override. I pulled out the next item, and the next, the smart TV, the espresso machine, the sound bar. With each one, I was polite, firm, and precise. I quoted serial numbers from memory. I had my list. I did not mention my family. I did not say, Aunt Paula stole this. I just said, fiduciary error. Original tender. Trust requirements. These were the magic words. They were the corporate language that bypassed the customer script and put me in the colleague category. In 45 minutes, I had processed the returns for $31,600. Every cent was directed back to the trust account. There was one problem. This last item, Ronald said, holding the box for my mother's laptop. It appears to have been personalized, a custom engraving on the case. Ah, I said. Aunt Paula, tacky and permanent. I cannot accept this for a cash refund, he said apologetically. I understand completely, I said, shifting to phase 2. In that case, we will take store credit, but the credit must not be in my name. It must be issued to the Harlan Beckett Gift Trust. Can you create a credit account under that business name? Yes, that we can do. He processed the credit, $4,200, now legally tied to the trust. Thank you, Ronald, I said. Now, I would like to make a purchase. I walked him over to the health and wellness technology aisle. I need this, I said, pointing to a high-end leather lift chair with heat and massage. And this, I said, picking up the safest, most advanced ceramic space heater they sold. And this, I said, taking a smart lock system, the kind with a fingerprint reader and a remote camera. These will be for Mr. Harlan Beckett, I said, sliding the new store credit card back to him. And I need them delivered today. Today, ma'am? It is the 26th. I know, I said, and I will be paying for the expedited white glove delivery and installation from the remaining credit. While he processed the sale, I was on my phone, in the bank portal. I refreshed the screen. The refunds were not there yet, of course, but I did not need them. I was watching the other side of the ledger. I went to the trust's operating account. I initiated a direct transfer. I purchased the items. Total cost $3,820. I had the new receipt printed, sold to Harlan Beckett Gift Trust. I stepped away and made a call. Snowbridge? Ms. Alvarez, please? It is Sienna Gray. Yes. Hello. I am having some medical support equipment delivered to my grandfather's room today. A lift chair, a new heater, and a smart lock for his door. Yes, they will be there by 4. Wonderful. Please have someone sign for it and send me the confirmation. I hung up. Mrs. Calder was watching me, her eyes bright. We walked out of the store into the bright, cold afternoon, the duffel bags now empty. My goodness, Sienna, she murmured, clutching her purse. It was like watching a surgeon. No anger, just precision. You are putting his name back where it belongs, she whispered, squeezing my arm. Not just on a tag, on the things that matter, his safety, his comfort. Exactly, I said. We got in the car. I turned off the body camera and pulled the memory card. I kept Evan out of it. He had texted me twice. Where are the new games? And Mom is wondering where the coffee machine went. I texted back, handling returns. Do not get involved. This is not your fight. Stay out of it. I mean it. Evan, protect yourself. I dropped Mrs. Calder off. Thank you for your help, I said. God bless you, child. You are your grandfather's granddaughter. I drove not to my mother's, but back to the coffee shop. I sat in the same booth as the night before. I pulled out my laptop. I connected to the Wi-Fi. I sent a short, encrypted text to Rhea Coleman. Phase 1 complete. $31,600 recaptured to trust. $4,200 in dedicated credit. Assets reallocated to grantor's direct medical care. Phase 2. The accounting. Ready when you are. I opened a new file. I began to build the presentation. I was a financial analyst. I was good at my job. I imported the photo of last year's tag. I imported the high-contrast UV photo of the ghost H. I created a timeline. December 16th, grantor's stated intent. December 20th, fiduciary fund diversion. December 24th, Willful destruction of origin. December 26th, asset reclamation and reallocation. I embedded the receipt from the electronics store, showing the purchase of the lift chair. I embedded the signed delivery confirmation from Snowbridge. This was not a family dispute. This was a financial report, and I was getting ready to present my findings. I returned to my mother's house on the evening of December 27th. The atmosphere was thick with unsaid things. The empty spaces under the tree, where the piles of high-value electronics had been, were like missing teeth. My note about duplicates and hassles had been accepted at face value, but the relief at not having to deal with returns was now warring with the sudden, gaping deficit of new toys. My mother, Lydia, was trying, with a desperate, brittle cheer, to knit the evening back together. We were gathered for dinner, a Boxing Day leftover feast, as she called it, a day late. Paula, I just have to say again, Christmas was a triumph, Lydia said, raising her wine glass. So beautifully organized, the theme, the paper, everything, just a total success. Aunt Paula smiled, a tight, modest little dip of her chin. She was the picture of serene, benevolent control. It was a team effort, Lydia. As I keep saying, it is about the family. I had spent the day preparing. My briefcase, sitting by my chair, contained my portable printer, my laptop, and a file folder. I waited. Before we ate, I placed a small, beautifully wrapped box on the center of the coffee table. It was not from the trust. I had paid for this myself. What is that, dear? Lydia asked, seizing on a new, non-contentious object. It is for Grandpa, I said. I am going to see him tomorrow, and I wanted to bring him his gift, Gareth grunted. He is not going to know what it is. Sienna, the man is in the fog 90% of the time. He was not in the fog on Monday, I said, my voice quiet. And he was not in the fog on Christmas night. I picked up the small box. He was upset. His watch battery had died. I had it replaced for him, and I added something. I opened the box. Inside, on a velvet cushion, was his old gold Omega. I turned it over. On the back, a fresh, small inscription was visible. What does it say? Lydia asked, squinting. It says, I said, my voice clear and steady. Still from Harlan, always. Paula's smile became a thin, flat line. She set her wine glass down a little too hard. Well, that is very specific. You know, Sienna, some people feel that in this day and age, constantly putting individual names on things is rather divisive. It is an older way of thinking. True family, a modern family, believes in equality, in the collective. The opening, she had given it to me. I looked at her, my expression not angry, just curious, like an analyst who has found a rounding error. Equality is an interesting word for it. Paula, I have been wondering about that. I understand removing his name for equality, but I'm having trouble with the accounting. The accounting. Gareth's voice was a low growl. Yes, I said, turning to him. I was polite, as if asking for the salt. I was just wondering, why did you use his money to pay for it, but erase his name from it? The room went utterly still. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Lydia's face went pale. Evan, across the room, looked like he wanted to crawl under the carpet. I do not know what you mean, Paula said, her voice like ice. I'm just talking about the trust. I said simply, Grandpa Harlan's gift trust. The funds came from his account, did they not? The $48,000 disbursement. My cousin Ty, Paula's son, who had been sulking in the corner, suddenly came to life. He was 25, with the unearned confidence of a man who had never held a job he did not get from his parents. What are you? His accountant now. Sienna. It was a branding decision. It is time for a unified family brand. We cannot have one rogue member's name plastered on everything. It dilutes the message. The message? I asked. The family message. That we are a unit you would not understand. You are always at work. So you took his money, I said. But you erased his name to unify the brand. Was that the plan? That is a disgusting accusation, Gareth bellowed, slamming his hand on the arm of his chair. We did it to help him. He is old. He is tired. We simplified things. You simplified things with acetone, I said. The silence was now absolute. It was heavy. It was broken. I reached into my pocket and took out two things. One of the cream-colored, laser-printed, from family tags I had salvaged from the trash, and my pen-sized UV light. I was curious about the simplification process, I said. I laid the tag on the dark wood of the coffee table. You used very high-quality cardstock. It was a strange choice for such a cheap-looking tag, but it was not new cardstock, was it? I clicked on the light. The small, purple beam hit the tag, and there it was, glowing like a scar, the faint, angry, smudged outline of my grandfather's signature, the ghost of the H. Lydia let out a small, strangled gasp. Paula's face was white, her eyes narrowed to slits. Gareth looked like he wanted to hit me. My God, Sienna, Lydia whispered, her voice trembling. What is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Why are you ruining another holiday? I am not doing anything, I said, clicking the light off and putting it back in my pocket. I am just looking at the facts. Gareth stood up. Get out. If you are going to come in here and make these insane accusations. I am not accusing anyone, I said, standing up as well. I was not cowering. I was not yelling. I was just done with the scene. I am not going to argue. I am just going to go to my room. And tomorrow, I am going to go see Grandpa. I am going to give him his watch. I turned. I did not run. I walked. You know, Ty's voice, sharp and sneering, hit my back. It does not even matter what you do. Sienna, dangle your little trinkets. At the end of the day, all that money in the trust. It is family money anyway. It belongs to all of us. I stopped at the base of the stairs. I turned my head just slightly. I did not look at him. I looked at the wall, but I spoke to him. That is the most interesting thing you have said all night. Ty, I said. I will be sure to remember it. I went up to my room and locked the door. They thought the fight was over. They thought I had shown my hand, that the worst was done. They were wrong. The UV light was just the theater. I sat at my desk and pulled my portable printer from my briefcase. I connected it to my laptop. I logged into the bank portal. I pulled up the statement for the Harlan Beckett Gift Trust. I printed it, a single page. I took out a yellow highlighter. I drew one, clean, sharp line, December 20th, Payee Vance Family Services, LLC, memo event management fee, amount $8,400. I slipped the highlighted statement into my file folder. I slipped the small, inscribed watch box in as well. Then I picked up my phone. I composed a group text to my mother, my uncle, my aunt, and Ty. I did not include Evan. Thank you for dinner, I typed. Just so we are all on the same page, I will be visiting Grandpa Harlan tomorrow at 2 p.m. I think it is important we all clear the air. We can read the trust bylaws together, the part about his name, and the part about family money. I am sure he would love to hear your thoughts. Ty, see you all at Snowbridge. I hit send. I turned off my phone. I could hear them shouting downstairs. It was the sound of the wave receding. Just before the tsunami hits, my text message had detonated the fragile peace of the last 2 days. My phone had buzzed all morning with frantic, angry messages from Lydia and Gareth. They were not coming. It was a ridiculous, paranoid demand. I was ungrateful. I was trying to upset Harlan. I ignored them. I arrived at Snowbridge at precisely 2 p.m. As promised, I walked past the reception, carrying my locked briefcase, and went straight to Harlan's suite. He was waiting. He was dressed not in his pajamas, but in pressed slacks and his favorite cashmere sweater, the one I had gotten him 2 Christmases ago. The fog was nowhere to be seen. His eyes were sharp, angry, and alert. "They are not coming, are they?" he said. It was not a question. "No, Grandpa, they are not." "Fools," he spat. "Cowards." "It is all right," I said, setting my briefcase on his small dining table. "They are not the ones I needed to talk to today. This meeting was for you." I took out the small, square box I had carried from my mother's house. "This is for you. From Christmas." He looked at the box, then at me. He opened it. His old Omega watch sat on the cushion, its gold case gleaming. He picked it up, his fingers trembling slightly. He turned it over. He traced the new small letters on the back. "Still from Harlan, always." He looked up at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw the man who had built an empire from nothing. His eyes were not misty, they were hot. "They did it, did not they?" he said, his voice a low rasp. "They took my name off, just like you said they would." "Yes," I said, "they did." "Paula," he whispered, and the name was a curse. "Grandpa," I said, opening my briefcase, "this is not a family argument anymore. This is a legal proceeding, and you are my client." I took out a file. It was a clean copy of the Harlan Beckett Gift Trust. I had the relevant page marked. "I need you to listen," I said, my voice shifting from granddaughter to analyst. "This is Article 7, Section 3. The purpose of holiday gifting. It states that all gifts purchased from the trust must clearly and legibly state their origin from the grantor, Harlan Beckett, to educate beneficiaries, and instill a measurable sense of gratitude." I looked up from the page. It goes on. "Any deviation from this purpose, or any amendment to this clause, requires the explicit, written, and notarized consent of the grantor, Harlan Beckett, and the agreement of both co-trustees." I paused. "Grandpa, did you give Paula or Gareth your explicit, written consent to change this clause?" His hand tightened on the watch until his knuckles were white. "I did not sign a change," he said, his voice shaking with a cold fury. I told you, the tags must have my name. It is my money. It is my lesson." "I know," I said. "And they did not just defy your lesson. Grandpa, they are threatening your care." I took out my phone. I spoke to Brenda, the head nurse. "On Christmas night, I'm going to play you a recording of our conversation." I pressed play. The speakers were quiet, but the words were clear. Brenda's voice. "Mrs. Vance inquired if the January payment could be deferred, and then she said the trust was a bit tight after the holidays." Harlan closed his eyes. The anger was replaced by a deep, weary pain. He let out a long, slow breath. "They said I was expensive," he whispered. "She told me, Paula. She said my needs were becoming a significant operational cost, and she smiled when she said it." He looked at me, his eyes now hard as flint. "What do we do?" "Sienna." "We drain the swamp," I said. "I have a video conference scheduled in precisely 2 minutes. I need your permission to proceed." "Do it." I opened my laptop, connected to the guest Wi-Fi, and initiated the call. A face appeared, a man in his late 50s, his office lined with law books. "Nolan," I said. "Sienna, Nolan Crisp, the trust's attorney and co-trustee," said. His voice was neutral, wary. "This is an unusual request. You said Harlan was with you." I turned the laptop. "I am right here. Nolan, it is good to see you." Nolan's expression softened. "Harlan, it is good to see you, too. You look well." "I am not well, Nolan," Harlan said. "I am being erased, and I am being told I am too expensive. Now, Sienna has my full and undivided attention. Please proceed." I turned the laptop back to me. "Nolan, I am here with my grandfather, the grantor of the trust. I am also a beneficiary. As such, I am formally requesting clarification on the December holiday disbursement. It was $48,000, Sienna, for gifts, As per every year, Nolan said, already sounding bored. And was there also an event management fee of $8,400, paid directly to Vance Family Services, LLC? Nolan was silent. He frowned. He began typing. Yes, I see that. Paula authorized it, coded as administrative costs for the holiday. Vance Family Services, LLC, is a shell company registered to Paula's home address. Nolan, she paid herself over $8,000 to, and I quote, streamline the process. And that process involved a material breach of trust. A breach? His voice sharpened. I am reading from Article 7, Section 3. I read the clause aloud. Nolan, as co-trustee, did you sign an amendment waiving that requirement? Nolan was pale. No, I did not. I was never consulted. And Grandpa Harlan did not sign one either, which means Paula, as co-trustee, acted unilaterally, violated a binding clause, and then paid herself an exorbitant, uninvoiced fee for doing so. Nolan was speechless. Nolan, I continued, I have one more person I need to add to this call. My personal counsel, Rhea Coleman. A second window popped up. Rhea was in her office, her face sharp, her hair pulled back. She did not smile. Mr. Crisp, she said, nodding. Ms. Coleman. Nolan was flustered. What is this? Mr. Crisp, Rhea said, her voice like ice. My client, Ms. Gray, has retained me. We have evidence of a clear breach of fiduciary duty by your co-trustee, Paula Vance. We have documentation of the violation of Article 7, Section 3. We also have documentation, and here she held up a paper, of the wire transfer of $8,400 to an entity owned by Mrs. Vance, which constitutes self-dealing. Nolan looked like he was going to be sick. I was not aware. But that is not why we called, Rhea said, her voice softening slightly. Or at least, not the only reason. Sienna. I shared my screen. Nolan, when I discovered this breach, I took immediate action to protect the trust's assets. As you know, the gifts were purchased, but in violation of the trust's bylaws. I pulled up the spreadsheet. On December 26th, I used the gift receipts which were carelessly left behind to conduct a full return of all high-value, non-personalized items. As of this morning, $31,600 has been successfully recaptured and is being refunded to the trust's original tender. Nolan's jaw dropped. Furthermore, I continued, the remaining value, approximately $4,200 in personalized items, was converted to store credit in the name of the Harlan Beckett Gift Trust. I then used that credit to purchase these items. I shared the second file, the receipts. 1 therapeutic lift chair, 1 advanced safety ceramic heater, 1 biometric smart lock for my grandfather's door, to prevent unauthorized access to his suite. All delivered and installed yesterday, all purchased in the trust's name, for the grantor's direct medical benefit and safety. I believe this falls perfectly within the trust's stated purpose, does it not? Nolan was quiet for a full 10 seconds. Then he nodded, a slow, impressed smile spreading across his face. Ms. Gray, Sienna, that was exceptionally well executed. Yes, that is a perfect allocation of funds. Good, Rhea said, cutting back in. Then we are all in agreement that a breach occurred, and that my client has already acted to mitigate the financial damage. Now we must address the breach itself. We are formally preparing a demand for accounting to be served to Mrs. Vance and Mr. Gareth, her husband, this afternoon. They will have 72 hours to provide a full and complete accounting for the last 24 months of their expenditures, with receipts. They will not comply, Nolan said, his voice hardening. He was on our side now. They will not have a choice, Rhea said, and we will be petitioning for Mrs. Vance's immediate suspension as co-trustee, pending a full audit. That is agreeable, Nolan said. I turned the laptop back to my grandfather. He had been listening, watching, a small, proud smile on his face. "Grandpa," I said gently, "there is one last thing. We need to establish your intent, right now, in front of witnesses." I took a single, fresh piece of Snowbridge stationery and a black felt-tip pen. "Mr. Crisp, Miss Coleman, I need you to witness this." I handed the pen to Harlan. "Grandpa, can you please write down your wishes for the Christmas gifts?" His hand was steady. He wrote one, clear line. He signed his name. He held it up to the camera. It read, "Gifts for my grandchildren must bear my name, Harlan Beckett." "There," he said. "Is that clear enough for you?" "Nolan." "It is." "Harlan," Nolan said, his voice thick. "It is perfectly clear." I saw my grandfather was tiring. The energy was draining from him. "Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. Thank you, Nolan," I said, ending the call. I helped him back to his armchair. I put the new, freshly signed paper in my briefcase. "They will be angry," he murmured, his eyes drooping. "Let them be angry," I said. "Now you rest." I left his suite and went to the lounge. I pulled out my phone. I sent a text to Evan. "The meeting has been set. December 30th, 10 in the morning, here, at Snowbridge. Nolan Crisp will be here. So will my lawyer. Your parents are being served with a legal demand. You need to be there. You are a witness. Do not talk. Just listen." Then I made one last call. "Mrs. Calder Sienna, it is moving faster than I thought. Yes, he is strong. Can I ask you a favor? That box you told me about, the one with all of Mr. Beckett's old tags. From the last 10 years, can I borrow it for a meeting on the 30th? She was silent. "You are building an ark, aren't you, dear?" "I am," I said, "and I'm not letting anyone miss the boat." The Snowbridge common room was a sterile, neutral-toned box, smelling faintly of lemon-scented polish and weak coffee. It was the perfect, airless setting for a financial execution. We had taken the large conference table. At its head, my grandfather, Harlan Beckett, sat. He was not in a wheelchair. He was sitting, enthroned, in the new, black leather therapeutic lift chair I had purchased with his own recaptured money. He was alert, his hands resting on the armrests, his gaze level and intensely calm. My mother, Lydia, and my Uncle Gareth sat 3 feet back from the table, as if distance might absolve them. Paula, my aunt, was pale beneath her makeup, but composed. She sat beside Gareth, a thin, expensive-looking leather portfolio placed squarely in front of her. My cousin Ty, arrogant and bored, was slumped in a chair by the window, his attention on his phone. My brother, Evan, sat next to me, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. He stared at the wood grain of the table, avoiding everyone's eyes. And to my left, my lawyer, Rhea Coleman, sat perfectly still, a single, slim file in front of her. Nolan Crisp, the co-trustee and family lawyer, cleared his throat. He looked haggard, a man caught between his fiduciary duty and the family who signed his retainer. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Nolan began, his voice straining for a normalcy that was not present. "As I stated in my email, this is not a legal deposition. This is a semi-formal review of the trust's purpose and recent expenditures, requested by the grantor, Mr. Beckett, and by a beneficiary, Ms. Gray, which is, frankly, insulting," Paula said, her voice smooth and practiced. She had rehearsed this. She leaned forward, addressing Nolan but looking at Harlan. "Harlan, I am appalled that it has come to this. The decision to change the gift tags was a simple aesthetic one. We, as a family, wanted a unified, modern look. From family. It is about unity, inclusion. The idea that I was somehow erasing you is just, it is an offensive fantasy." She turned her gaze to me. There was absolutely no self-interest involved. "Sienna, it was done to help." I did not respond to her. I kept my eyes on Nolan. "Thank you, Paula. That clarifies your stated motive." I would like to address the facts. Ria placed a small, portable projector on the table. It whirred to life, projecting a bright, white square onto the beige wall. I connected my laptop. I am a financial analyst. Nolan, I said, my voice quiet, my hands steady. I do not speculate on motive. I follow the data. Let us follow the data. The first image appeared, a simple, clean spreadsheet. Here's the primary disbursement, December 20th, $48,000, authorized by Paula Vance, coded as holiday gifting. This is the baseline. I clicked. A red box appeared on the screen, highlighting a second. Concurrent transfer. And here's the discrepancy. Same day, a separate transfer, $8,400, Pay Vance Family Services, LLC, memo event management fee. The room was silent. Paula, I said, turning to her. Vance Family Services, LLC, is a domestic limited liability company registered to your home address, is it not? And you are its sole proprietor, correct? It is my event planning business, she said, her voice tightening. That fee was for coordination, sourcing, and logistical management. It was a massive undertaking. Sourcing, I repeated. I clicked the mouse. The slide changed. On the left was Mrs. Calder's canceled invoice, dated December 19th, for the actual sourcing of every item on Harlan's list. On the right was Paula's email, time-stamped 1 hour later, terminating Mrs. Calder's services. Subject holiday services, I read. The family has decided to handle all purchases internally this year. I looked at Nolan. Paula canceled the expert who had already performed the sourcing, then paid her own shell company $8,400 for the logistics of driving to the mall. That is not a management fee. Nolan, that is theft. It is called self-dealing. This is outrageous. Gareth slammed his flat hand on the table. You have no proof. Gareth, be quiet, Nolan warned. Let us talk about the process. Then, I said. Paula claimed this was an aesthetic choice, but the From family tags you created, they were not new. I clicked. The room went dark. The image that filled the wall was my UV photograph, the ghostly smudged, right-leaning H, glowing an angry purple against the cream-colored cardstock. This, I said, was the tag on my own gift. Your aesthetic choice was acetone, Paula. I clicked again. A new image, a high-resolution, macro photograph of the edge of the tag, the paper fibers visibly frayed and chemically burned. This is what solvent does to paper. This was not a rebranding. This was the deliberate chemical destruction of the grantor's name. It was forgery. It was a cover-up to justify the fee you paid yourself. I looked at my brother. My voice softened, but I did not back down. Evan, you were at the house on the night of December 23rd. Evan flinched. He looked at Paula, then at me, then at our grandfather, who was watching him, waiting. Sienna, do not, Lydia whispered, her voice a plea. Just the facts, Evan, I said. Did you or did you not see Aunt Paula and Ty changing the tags at the dining room table? Evan swallowed. He looked at Harlan. Yes, he whispered, his voice cracking. I saw them. They were using nail polish remover. Ty said. He said it was to make the Instagram photos look cleaner. I did not know. You little rat, Ty hissed from the corner. That is enough, Gareth roared, lunging to his feet, his chair scraping violently against the floor. You are sitting here, attacking my wife, a woman who has given everything to this family. Over some stupid tiny bits of paper, you are badgering a child. Lydia was openly crying now, her face in her hands. Sienna, please, stop, she sobbed. Please, it is just a small thing. It is a misunderstanding. Why are you doing this to us? Why are you blowing this tiny, little thing all out of proportion? Lydia, the voice cut through the room. It was not loud, but it was absolute. My grandfather had not moved. He had not raised his voice. He was looking at his daughter. "My name," Harlan Beckett said, his voice clear and resonant in the quiet room, "is not a tiny thing." Lydia choked on a sob and fell silent. The room was a vacuum. Rhea Coleman stood up. She was holding a single, stapled document. She moved with a fluid, lethal grace, walking past me and placing the document gently on the table, directly in front of Paula. "Mrs. Vance," Rhea said, her voice crisp, cool, and devoid of any emotion. "This is a formal demand for accounting, pursuant to state law. You have 72 hours, until 9 in the morning, January 3rd, to produce a full, itemized, and receipt-backed accounting of every expenditure you have authorized as co-trustee for the past 24 months. Gareth let out a short, harsh laugh. "Or what? You will sue us. Good luck." "Or," Rhea said, turning to him, "we will file an emergency petition with the probate court for your immediate removal as trustee, based on the evidence of self-dealing and material breach of fiduciary duty presented here today. We will request a temporary independent trustee be appointed by the court. That trustee will freeze all assets, including your personal accounts, pending a full forensic audit, which, I assure you, will be far more invasive and far more public than this meeting." Paula did not move. She did not touch the document. She just stared at the glowing spreadsheet on the wall. Gareth's ruddy face had turned a pasty, unhealthy white. In the corner, Ty was no longer slouching. He was sitting bolt upright, his fingers flying across his phone, his face pale. I knew what he was doing. He was Googling breach of fiduciary duty. Nolan Crisp, who had watched this all unfold, stood up. He had his answer. He was no longer a family friend. He was an officer of the court. "Paula, Gareth," Nolan said, his voice hard and final, "I strongly suggest you retain independent counsel. This meeting is over. We will reconvene on January 3rd, the first business day of the new year, to receive your response to this demand. If you do not provide the accounting, or if it is incomplete, my office will join Ms. Coleman's petition for your removal. That is all." The meeting on the 30th of December was an amputation. We had cut away the diseased limb Paula and Gareth to save the patient. Harlan, but amputations are never clean. They are messy, they are bloody, and the phantom pains are immediate. My phone began its steady, vibrating thrum of recrimination less than an hour after Nolan Crisp had slammed his briefcase shut. The family, which had been silent, was now in full, panicked revolt. The first message was from my mother. "You have torn this family apart. You have embarrassed us. You have embarrassed me. This is not how we handle things. This is a private matter. You are cruel." I sat in the quiet of my hotel room, which I had booked to escape the toxicity of my mother's house. I looked at the message. I saw the fear, the shame, the lifetime of prioritizing appearances over truth. I typed a single, simple reply. "I am keeping my promise to Grandpa." I did not have to wait long for the rest. Uncles, aunts, distant cousins. The narrative had been spun, and it was traveling fast. Ty was the patient zero of the smear campaign. His version was simple, effective, and utterly false. Sienna got greedy. She did not get the watch she wanted for Christmas, so she threw a legal fit. She is trying to get Grandpa declared incompetent so she can take over the trust. She is stealing his money. She is literally taking gifts back from children. That last part was his masterstroke. I saw it on a cousin's Facebook post. A vague, "Praying for our family. So sad when one person's greed hurts the little ones." I did not reply. I did not engage. I simply took a screenshot. I documented the timestamp. I forwarded the image to Rhea Coleman's secure email with one word: defamation. I was an analyst. I knew that in a corporate war, you do not respond to rumors. You log them. You trace their origin, and you wait for the proper moment to use them as evidence of malicious intent. I turned off my phone. The digital noise was a distraction. I needed to focus on the signal. The next afternoon, a package arrived at my hotel. delivered by a local courier. It was a simple, elegant cardboard box from a local stationer. I opened it. Inside was not stationery. It was a small, wooden recipe box. It smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. On top was a handwritten note on Mrs. Calder's heavy cream-colored cardstock. Sienna, dear, I thought these might be of use. This is the box Mr. Beckett had me keep, to hold the extras. He was so specific. He would always write 2 or 3, just in case one smudged. I saved the backups. This is 10 years' worth of his love. Use it well. M. Calder. I lifted the lid. The box was full, packed tight with hundreds of small rectangular gift tags, all in his hand. To Evan, do not crash this one. Love, Grandpa Harlan. To Lydia, wear it in good health. From Harlan. To Ty, brains, not brawn. From Grandpa Harlan, tag after tag, year after year. A library of his consistency, a physical, tactile refutation of Paula's claim that this was a new, modern idea. He had never, not once, skipped signing his name. I closed the box. This was not just evidence. It was a shield. My phone, which I had reluctantly turned back on, rang. It was not an angry relative. It was Snowbridge. Ms. Gray. It is Brenda, the head nurse. Her voice was different. It was lighter. Brenda, is everything all right? Oh, honey, it is more than all right. I am calling to thank you. I do not know what you did or how you did it, but that lift chair, it is a miracle. Mr. Beckett has been sleeping through the night. His circulation is better. His mood is... I have not seen him this bright in a year. He is sitting up. He is reading the paper. The heater is safer. The lock on his door makes him feel secure. You did a good thing, Ms. Gray, a really good thing. I closed my eyes, the tightness in my chest easing. Just for a moment, this was the signal. This was the truth. $31,600 of it, sitting in my grandfather's room, making him safer. Thank you, Brenda. That is the best news I have had all week. Please, keep me updated. I hung up, and for the first time, I allowed myself a small, quiet smile. This was not revenge. This was not a fight. It was a restoration. The calm was broken 2 hours later by a call from Rhea. Sienna, I am in, she said, her voice fast and low. I got a tip from a friend at the bank who owed me a favor. I pulled the public-facing statements for Vance Family Services, LLC, and it is not just the $8,400 event fee. Paula has been billing the trust for 2 years. There is a recurring monthly charge, coded as lifestyle management fee, for $5,000. I did the math in my head. That is $60,000 a year. For 2 years, Rhea confirmed, $120,000. On top of the Christmas skimming, she has been paying her mortgage, her car payment, and her country club dues, all under lifestyle management. She has been treating your grandfather's trust as her personal slush fund. The small smile was gone, the cold, analytical precision returned. So the 24-month demand, it is going to show everything. It will, Rhea said, unless she commits perjury and manufactures 2 years of receipts by January 3rd, which she will not be able to do. We have her. We have her cold. I hung up. I pulled out my laptop. I opened a new file, a simple flowchart. I was a financial analyst. My job was to make complex data easy to understand. I drew a large blue box, Harlan Beckett Trust Fund, Asset X. I drew a long, red arrow. Below it, a smaller black box, Vance Family Services, LLC, Paula Vance, sole proprietor. Beside that, I pasted screenshots of publicly available records. The LLC's registration address, matching Paula's home, from the black box. I drew 3 more red arrows, pointing down. One led to a box with a picture of a house. Monthly lifestyle fee, $5,000. One led to a box with a picture of a credit card. Admin costs unknown. And the last, the one that had started it all. Event management fee $8,000. $400. I stared at it. It was so simple, so clear, so damning. My brother Evan called. His voice was a whisper. Sienna, she is losing it. She is saying you are trying to put Aunt Paula in jail. Gareth called Dad. Everyone is. They are choosing sides. Sigh. What do I say? Nothing, I said, my voice firm, cutting him off. You say nothing. Evan, you do not defend me. You do not defend them. You are a witness, not a soldier. This is not your fight. Stay out of the group chats. Do not reply to Ty. You are my little brother, and I am protecting you. The only way to do that is for you to be quiet. Do you understand? I think so. It is awful. I know, I said, my voice softening. Be awful, but be quiet. I will see you soon. I hung up. I had one last hunch to follow. One last loose thread from the spreadsheet of returned items. Lydia, my mother, prided herself on her charity work. She volunteered and donated heavily to one specific high-end thrift shop in Edina. The Donation Boutique, she called it. I drove there. The store was full of Christmas cast-offs. I browsed the aisles, my heart a cold, heavy stone. I went to the electronics shelf, and there it was, a smart speaker, the newest model, the one that had been on Evan's list, the one my spreadsheet said had been purchased by Paula. It was still in its box, unopened, and tucked under the plastic wrap. The one piece of evidence they had forgotten to remove was the small, cream-colored, laser-printed tag from family. I picked up the box. I turned it over. The serial number was printed clearly on the bottom. I pulled out my phone. I opened my spreadsheet. Item smart speaker, Gen 5. Serial number, G593 Tango Zulu. I looked at the box. G593 Tango Zulu. A perfect match. A cold, hollow feeling opened up inside me. They had not just erased his name. They had not just stolen the money. They had taken a gift, purchased with his funds, and had not even given it to the intended recipient, my brother. They had just dumped it, donated it, still bearing the forged tag, for a tax write-off. The contempt was staggering. It was not about branding or unity. It was about waste. It was about such profound, arrogant carelessness that they could not even be bothered to finish the con. I did not buy the speaker. I just took a picture of it, the tag, and the serial number clear in the frame. I sent it to Rhea. Add this to the file. I drove to Snowbridge. I did not feel angry. I felt empty. And then I felt a deep, quiet resolve. I found Harlan in his new lift chair, reading a history of the Second World War. Sienna, he said, smiling, the new heater purring at his feet. You are just in time. The nurse says I am up 1.5 pounds. That is wonderful, Grandpa. We sat in silence for a while, just watching the snow fall outside his window. You know, he said, not looking at me. I was thinking, we never got a proper Christmas photo. All that mess. He gestured, and I knew he meant the family, the yelling, the fog. No, I said. We did not. I would like one, he said. A late one. I want a picture of me, and you, and Evan, and I want to send it to the family. He looked at me, his eyes sharp. But it has to be right. I want to be sitting here, with my gifts, the real gifts, this chair, the blanket you brought, and I want the tags to be visible. His eyes held mine. On one condition, the tags. They have to say my name. They have to say, from Harlan. I reached into my bag and pulled out the cedar box Mrs. Calder had sent. I placed it in his lap. He opened it. He saw the tags, his own handwriting, a decade's worth, staring up at him. He looked at me, his eyes full. I know, Grandpa, I said softly. I know. I took out a fresh, new tag, a clean, cream-colored card. I took out his favorite black felt-tip pen. Let's make some new ones, I said. He took the pen, his hand steady. He placed the tag on the arm of his chair. He paused. Then he wrote, in that familiar, strong, right-leaning script, to Sienna, my analyst. From Grandpa Harlan, I took another. He signed it. To Evan, be brave. From Grandpa Harlan. I took a picture. Not of him, but of the tags. The new one. His signature still wet and black. And beside it, one of the old ones from the box. 10 years apart. The hand was the same. The name was the same. I was not getting revenge. I was not trying to hurt anyone. I was just correcting the file. I was putting his name back. Right where it belonged. The new year felt like a ceasefire. A cold, gray pause between the battle of the 30th and the coming war. The deadline for the accounting was January 3rd. At 9 in the morning, Nolan Crisp forwarded the email he had received from Paula's new, expensive lawyer. It was a joke. It was not an accounting. It was an insult. A 2-page document that listed vast sums under vague, meaningless headings. Q4 coordination fees, ongoing logistical support, administrative reimbursements. There were no receipts, no invoices, no ledgers. It was a masterclass in obfuscation. A legal document designed to say nothing at all while billing the trust for the lawyer's time. Nolan's response was immediate and thermonuclear. At 10:30, an email went out to the entire family, including Lydia, Gareth, Paula, and Ty. Due to the failure of co-trustee Paula Vance to provide a satisfactory or legally compliant accounting of expenditures, her authority as co-trustee is temporarily suspended. Effective immediately, all discretionary payments, administrative fees, and non-essential expenditures from the Harlan Beckett Trust Fund are frozen, pending a full forensic audit, only essential, pre-approved medical and living expenses for the grantor, Mr. Harlan Beckett, will be processed. He had done it. He had turned off the tap. My phone rang so hard it vibrated off the hotel nightstand. It was Gareth. "You," he shouted, not even bothering with a hello. "You little wrecker. You think this is a game. You just froze your mother's household allowance. You just cut off the funds for this entire family." I let him vent. I let the rage and panic wash over the line. When he finally paused to take a breath, I spoke, my voice as quiet as a spreadsheet. "I did not do anything. Gareth, I am just a beneficiary. Nolan Crisp, the trust's lawyer, froze the accounts. He did it because your wife, the co-trustee, submitted a fraudulent accounting for the $120,000 she has paid herself over the last 2 years. This is not about emotions. This is about principles. It is about Article 7, Section 3, the gratitude clause, the one you all violated. Gratitude," he spat. "You are destroying this family over a word on a piece of paper." "It is not just a word," I said. "It is the entire legal basis for the fund, and you broke it." I hung up. The next visitor was my mother. She did not call. She showed up at my hotel room door, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. "Sienna, please," she said, her voice a low, desperate whisper. "You have to stop this. You have to call off your lawyer. Let us have a negotiation, a private one, just us. We can figure something out." "A negotiation for what, Mom?" For Paula to step down, quietly, no lawyers, no court. She will step down. If you just stop this, stop digging. You have made your point. You do not need to replace her." I looked at my mother. She was not a villain. She was a coward, and that was so much worse. She was the one who would rather let the theft continue than face the public shame of correcting it. "She is not offering to step down. Mom, you are offering me a deal. Let her keep the money she stole, and in exchange, she will stop stealing more. Is that it?" "Sienna, you are making this sound so ugly." "It is ugly, Mom, and no, I am not negotiating. You are tearing us apart," she cried, the tears finally coming. "I am not," I said, my voice hard. "I am just turning on the light. The fact that you are all scurrying like cockroaches is not my fault." She left without another word. The final piece of ammunition came, as it always did, from Evan. He texted me on the evening of January 4th. It was a screenshot, a long, damning scroll from the family group chat. "Ty, this is insane. Nolan has frozen everything. Mom and Dad's accounts are locked. This is what Sienna wanted. She wants to control all of us." A cousin. "What are we going to do?" Ty. "We do what we should have done years ago. We stop being dependent on his signature. We use this to our advantage. We go to the court ourselves. We file a petition to have him declared incompetent. He is 90% of the time anyway. We form a family council. We merge all the trusts. And we brand it. The family. No more Harlan. Just family. We take control. He is too old to be in charge. This is our money now." I read it 3 times. It was a declaration of war. They were not just trying to steal. They were planning a coup. This was not about Christmas. It was about erasure. It was about taking his name, his legacy, and his money, and wiping him off his own assets. I forwarded the screenshot to Rhea. Her response was a single, cold line. "I have finalized the petition. We will be asking the judge to appoint a temporary, independent trustee to protect Harlan from his own family. They just handed us the gun, the smoke, and the motive." I knew what I had to do. The meeting on January 5th was no longer a review. It was a trial, and I was going to be ready. I spent the next 12 hours preparing the courtroom. First, I invited the witnesses. This would not be a he said, she said battle. It would be a procession of facts. I called Mrs. Calder. "I need you at Snowbridge tomorrow at 10. And please, bring the box, the one with 10 years of his name." I called Ms. Alvarez, the Snowbridge manager. "I need you to confirm 2 things for Mr. Crisp tomorrow, my grandfather's lucidity, and the phone call you received from Paula Vance." I called Ronald, the manager from the returns department. "Ronald, I know this is an absurd request, but I need you to be at a meeting tomorrow. You are my expert witness. You just need to identify a receipt for acetone and confirm what it smells like on glossy cardstock." He agreed. My final act was at a print shop. I was an analyst, and I was preparing my quarterly review. I took my timeline, the one from my laptop, and I had it printed on a 6-foot-long banner, mounted on foam board. It was a simple, brutal flowchart of the money. Order, cancel, purchase, erase, return, reallocate to medical. And then, I printed my masterpiece. I had 2 images printed as large posters, 3 feet tall. The first, my UV photograph, the ghostly purple, chemically burned signature, the word Harlan, blurred and destroyed. The second, the photo I had taken in his room just yesterday, the fresh, crisp, 2025 signature, the black ink sharp against the cream tag, the hand steady, the name. Harlan, clear as day. One poster was the crime, the other was the proof of life. I loaded my car in the pre-dawn dark of January 5th. I felt a cold, clean calm. I knew this was the day. This was the end. This was the moment the numbers on my spreadsheet would be translated into the real world. I went to his room first. He was sitting up in his new lift chair, already dressed in a dark wool suit. A blue tie knotted perfectly at his throat. He looked like a chief executive officer ready for a hostile takeover. "They are coming," I said. "Let them," he said. He looked at the posters I was carrying. A slow, thin smile spread across his face. I helped him into his wheelchair, and he gripped my hand. His fingers were thin, but the strength in them was shocking. It was the grip of a man who had built everything from nothing, and who was not letting it go. "Sienna," he said, his voice a low, fierce command. "No more. Do not let them erase me again." "They will not," I said. "I promise. Today, we restore the name." We rolled down the empty hallway toward the conference room. I was his analyst, I was his granddaughter, and I was his executor. The small conference room at Snowbridge was not a conference room on January 5th. It was a courtroom, At the head of the table, my grandfather, Harlan Beckett, sat in his new lift chair, the black leather a stark contrast to the room's beige walls. He was the grantor, the judge, and the victim. To my right sat my lawyer, Rhea Coleman, and my brother, Evan, who looked like he was about to be physically ill. To my left, the witnesses Mrs. Calder, with her cedar box of history, and Ronald, the store manager, looking distinctly uncomfortable in his suit, his expert witness on acetone. Across from us sat the defendants, Paula, Gareth, and my mother, Lydia. Their lawyers had advised them not to come, to let the legal filings do the talking, but Nolan Crisp had made it clear, if you are not there, I will assume you concede the facts, and I will proceed with a summary judgment to remove you. So they came. Nolan Crisp, the co-trustee, stood at the small whiteboard, his face a mask of exhausted professionalism. This is the final review, Nolan said, his voice flat. We are here to review the facts and determine the immediate future of the trust. Ms. Gray, you have the floor. I did not stand. I turned on the projector. I am an analyst, I said, my voice echoing slightly in the tense silence. My job is to find the discrepancy. This is the discrepancy. I projected the first image onto the wall, my 6-foot-long timeline. On December 16th, Harlan Beckett states his intent. On December 19th, Mrs. Calder's 15-year service is canceled by Paula Vance. On December 20th, $48,000 is disbursed. On the same day, $8,400 is paid to a Shell LLC owned by Paula Vance. On December 24th, the grantor's name is chemically erased from the gifts. On December 26th, $31,600 of those assets are recaptured by me and returned to the trust. I clicked. The next image was the macro shot of the acetone burn tag. I asked Mr. Ronald, the returns manager from the store, to be here. Ronald, you handle merchandise fraud. What did you smell on those tags? Ronald cleared his throat. It was acetone, ma'am. Nail polish remover? It is used to dissolve ink on glossy cardstock. It leaves a distinct chemical burn on the fibers. I clicked again. A video file. I played the loop, over and over, of the UV light hitting the tag, the ghostly purple Harlan appearing and disappearing. This was not an aesthetic choice. Paula, I said, looking at her directly for the first time. This was a forgery. You did not create new tags. You destroyed the old ones. Now, let us talk about the money, I said, pulling up the final chart. $48,000, out. $8,400 to your LLC, Paula, for which you have provided 0 receipts. The remaining $39,600 was spent on gifts. Of those, I returned $31,600. I used $4,200 of the remainder to purchase this lift chair, this heater, and this lock for my grandfather's safety. The remaining $3,800 is in the hands of the family, including the speaker you donated to a thrift store for a tax write-off. The room was silent. Nolan Crisp, his face like stone, looked at Paula. Mrs. Vance, as co-trustee, you authorized the transfer of $8,400 to yourself, and you violated Article 7, Section 3. I have one question for you. Who directed the chemical erasure of the grantor's name? Paula's practiced composure shattered. She looked at the UV image on the wall. She looked at Nolan. She looked at her husband. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Gareth lunged forward in his chair. It was a family decision, he shouted, his voice cracking. We did it. We all did. It was to show solidarity, to bring the family together, to create a unified brand. It was for unity. Unity, I repeated. I did not look at him. I looked at Mrs. Calder. She understood. She reached forward, her hand steady, and placed the cedar box in the center of the table. She lifted the lid. This is 10 years of Mr. Beckett's unity. Gareth, I said, my voice quiet. I pulled out a tag from 2012. From Grandpa Harlan, I pulled out one from 2017. From Harlan, I pulled out one from 2021. From Harlan, hundreds of tags. Gareth, 10 years. Not a single from family in the box. This was not unity. This was a coup. All eyes turned to the head of the table. My grandfather had been silent. He leaned forward, and the small motor in his new chair whirred, bringing him to a state of perfect, commanding attention. He looked at his daughter, Lydia. He looked at his brother-in-law, Gareth. He looked at Paula. "My name," Harlan Beckett said, his voice not the rasp of an old man, but the cold, clear baritone of a chief executive officer, "belongs to me. My money belongs to the trust, and the gifts that come from that trust belong to my grandchildren." He pointed one, trembling, powerful finger at Paula. "You do not get to erase me. No one gets to erase me." Nolan Crisp stood up. It was over. Based on the evidence presented, the failure to provide an accounting, the clear and present self-dealing, and the violation of the trust's core bylaws, and with the full consent of the grantor, Harlan Beckett, he placed a document in front of Paula. "Paula Vance, you are hereby suspended as co-trustee. Effective immediately, you are ordered to repay the $8,400 to the trust within 10 days, or we will file for punitive damages. Gareth, your signature authority is restricted, pending a full audit of the last 24 months, which will be conducted by an independent firm." My mother, Lydia, finally broke. She put her head in her hands and let out a single, strangled, defeated sob. It was the sound of her social standing, her garden club reputation, evaporating. Evan, my little brother, moved his chair back. He put a hand on our mother's shoulder. He was comforting her, but he looked at me, and for the first time in his life, he was not scared. He was not weak. He looked at me, and he nodded. He understood. "My client has one final condition," Rhea said, her voice cutting through my mother's crying. I looked at Nolan. "This is not about the money. This is about the name. I want a binding, internal resolution, signed today, by you and by my grandfather, stating that from this day forward, any and all gifts, benefits, or disbursements from this trust must bear the words from Harlan Beckett, no exceptions. No family branding." Nolan Crisp looked at Harlan. Harlan nodded once. "Draw it up," Nolan said. He signed the resolution. The representative from Snowbridge, who had been sitting quietly in the back, stepped forward. "And Mr. Crisp, I just want to confirm, the check for Mr. Beckett's next quarter of care." "It has been secured," Nolan said, looking at me. "The assets have been protected." The room exhaled. Paula and Gareth gathered their things, their faces white, their expensive suits looking like costumes. Lydia was led out of the room by Evan. Ty had not even bothered to show up. They left. They did not speak. They just disappeared. The words from family were dead. Mrs. Calder and Ronald left next, Mrs. Calder squeezing my arm as she passed. Rhea packed her slim briefcase. "It is done. Sienna, you have your grandfather back." They all left, until it was just us, just me and Harlan, in the quiet, beige room, the projector still glowing on the wall. The snow was falling outside the window, thick and soft, covering the world in a clean white sheet. I walked over to the table and began to stack the files. I put the 10-year box of tags away. "Sienna," I turned. He was holding out his hand. I walked over. I reached into my bag and took out the small, square box I'd been carrying since Christmas. I placed it in his hand. He opened it. His old Omega. He picked it up, turned it over, and his thumb traced the new, small letters. "Still from Harlan, always." He looked up at me, and he smiled. A real, deep, genuine smile. He put the watch on his wrist. It looked right. "One last thing," he said. He reached for his black felt-tip pen. He pulled one of the fresh blank tags I had brought toward him. His hand was steady. The black ink was sharp. He wrote, "To Sienna, From Harlan. He handed it to me. I stayed for a long time, packing my evidence, my spreadsheets, my posters. I stacked the old tags, and the single new one, in a neat pile. His name, back where it belonged. The only sound in the room was the snow hitting the window. And then, another sound. Quiet, steady, rhythmic. It was the sound of his watch, the one I had fixed, the one he was wearing. It was ticking, the sound of time, of truth, of order, finally restored. Thank you all for listening to this story. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button, so this story can be heard by more people.